Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today in December. For those of you who don't know us, we'll go ahead and introduce ourselves. My name is Alexis. I'm an account executive here at RoboMQ.
And my name is David. I'm also an account executive here. Thanks for joining today.
Yeah, so today for this webinar, essentially what we're doing is kind of a brief overview of our product, Hire2Retire. So we'll see kind of a comprehensive run-through in general. If you do have any specific questions, feel free to reach out at any time if you're interested in seeing a demo for your specific HR system, AD setup, or so forth. Let us know, and we're happy to do that for you as well. What we can go ahead and start with is I'll run through a brief set of slides that kind of give you an overview of our product, what we do, and then jump into the product itself. So I will go ahead and share my screen. Okay. Did you see that just now? Yeah. No?
Hey, try to share your screen again.
Okay, let me try one more time. Okay, what about now?
Sounds good.
Okay, great. So what we have here, this is just a typical agenda of how today's going to go. We did our introductions. In these slides, we'll be going over the problem statement, core capabilities, how we are going to solve that with Hire2Retire, the demo itself, and though it says Q&A at the end, of course, feel free to jump in at any point. A little bit about us. And as for the problem we solve, these are some typical things we hear from our customers that come to us and things that we can solve with, of course. So poor first day at work experience, maybe a new hire comes in, there's been some difficulties potentially with getting their account set up, their email set up in a timely manner. Maybe there's some difficulties with security groups, distribution lists, having all of that in place, third-party applications, all of that. Of course, high cost of skilled sysadmin resources in that maybe your sysadmins can be doing jobs a little more interesting than the manual day-to-day of creating accounts, deleting accounts, managing access and privileges, and then, of course, delay in timely removal of access. So when someone's being terminated, it's their last day at the company, and you just want to be a little bit more safe in terms of data security and what's getting out there, we can help with that, which I will lead us straight into the key benefits that Hire2Retire specifically gives. So to contrast the previous slide, a superior first day at work experience, new hire comes in, everything is set up for them automatically. We sync employee profiles from your HR system, treating that as the source of truth, to your Active Directory, Google Directory, or just completely on the cloud. We're pretty big on role-based access control, so if you have anything that you kind of want to have set up, automatic provisioning or deprovisioning for various third-party applications, you can do a one-time setup on Hire2Retire. Now it's an automatic process. And for resource provisioning and service desk integration, we do natively integrate with a number of service desks currently. We are adding to this as well with our feature releases, and you'll see that on the product shortly. Finally, avoiding security and compliance risks. Everything you're about to see from Hire2Retire, we keep track of it, give it to you, and you in turn can use it to fulfill any compliance requirements on your end, like ISO 27001, SOC 2, and so forth. This is a typical before and after that we tend to see as well. So maybe if you look on the left, a typical before might be new hires coming in, HR puts that information into your HR system. Perhaps that creates a ticket that goes to your ITSM, and then a sysadmin may manually accomplish that task, then do everything to notify. They'll get that done, and you have that lifecycle change complete. Meanwhile, on the right is what it would be like with Hire2Retire. So that first step stays the same with HR putting the information into your HR system, but then the rest of those steps are automated. So we will get attributes of your choice like first name, last name, job title, etc. Run that through a rule set, custom workflow that's based off what you do today to automate your onboarding and offboarding steps, including profile updates, leave, and so forth. And of course, sync to your Active Directory, provision or deprovision access to your third-party applications, and so forth as well. Last thing here, kind of just a big picture to keep in mind before we jump into the product itself. So what we're about to look at is this yellow box of Hire2Retire, but we do connect externally to two things, and that's going to be your HR system and your Active Directory or equivalent. So pretty brief, but just wanted to give an overview of our product, what we do before diving in. Did I miss anything, David?
No, looks good.
Okay. Then if there are no questions, I will go ahead and share my screen to the product itself. Okay, and do you see this screen?
Yes.
Okay. So what you're looking at here is what you would see when you first log into Hire2Retire. All of these gray boxes are workflows. You can have as many as you like. Maybe if you want a separate workflow for contract workers or seasonal workers, that can be done here as well. For today, we'll just be using Bamboo HR as our HR system of choice, and let's say to hybrid Active Directory. Once you do click on a workflow, this is the first thing you'll see. You can think of it as an overview document or a business process document. Eventually, or essentially, all the steps that you've chosen on this workflow will be spit out here in plain English. So, for example, which attributes you've chosen to send to us from your HR system, how you want to map that into your Active Directory, the various steps you're choosing to automate at the lifecycle stages like hiring, rehiring, change of role or profile updates, termination, and so forth. All of these are here, easy to see if you don't want to get into the details of the workflow. Another thing to point out here is this version history. So even though we are a no-code self-service product, of course we're technically coding behind the scenes. So one thing you can always do is roll back to the last known good state. Now jumping to the Identity tab, this is where you'll make the bulk of your workflow decisions. Starting with the first step, pretty straightforward. You pick your HR system. These are a few of the ones that we natively integrate right now. If you see any that you may be using or may look familiar to you, we also do integrate with ATS systems like Paycom onboarding, ADP recruiting, and so forth. And this is where you choose your identity management type. So these are the ones we support currently. If you were, let's say, a hybrid right now, but you know that eventually we'd like to switch to being fully on the cloud, we can support that change. Same with HR systems. If there's one that you're using right now, but you know you plan to change later, that's fine. We can handle that transition as well. So, of course, this is where you next set up your connections to your HR system and Active Directory. Pretty straightforward here, whether you use API method or file extract method, this will differ based off your HR system. You put in that information here and then connect to your Active Directory here. Pretty basic overview given the time, but are there any questions so far? Okay, so once you do have those connections set up in place, now you can go ahead with the rest of these workflow steps. So first thing, HR data definition. This is where you pick which attributes you want to send to us. So you'll see all of the attributes from Bamboo HR are already available here. No energy needed on your part there. What you will do is if there is one of these you want to send to us, simply select it. It'll show up here, and that's what will be sent over to Hire2Retire. These options you see below are just some of the more popular ones with our customers. If there are other ones you have in mind, that totally works. You can just select it. It'll show up here. But some common ones are first name, last name, job title, department, location, and so forth. Now, one last thing to point out at this step is if you do have employees in various time zones, you can use this feature, which basically what it allows for is our support of scheduled events. So let's say someone's being terminated and it's their last day at 6 p.m. You want to have all of their access removed, account disabled, turn their mailbox into a shared mailbox, and more. If you have this option selected and mark which time zone they're in, this will just make sure that all of that steps that occurs happens at 6 p.m. in their time zone. Once you have selected the attributes you want to send over to Hire2Retire, the next step, of course, is mapping them into Active Directory. So all of those attributes you just chose will now show up here, and you can drag and drop them easily to the corresponding attribute. No coding needed, but we do support data transformations modeled off of Excel. So for example, here's a common use case. If they have a preferred name, use that. If not, first name, last name. You'll see all of these functions that you can use for any of these attributes, and throughout the platform you'll notice this. One thing that we do require is employee ID because it acts as our unique identifier, helps us know John Smith in Bamboo HR is the same as the one in Active Directory. If you don't have that set up right now, totally fine. We can help you get all of that set up as well, and we've done it in the past. Now, one other thing, we know for some of our customers, for example, you might have multiple domain names. If there's just one, you can put it in here. If not, of course, we have ways to handle that. You'll notice this icon is available throughout the platform, and what it is essentially a lookup table. So if you select it and maybe the domain was based off an attribute like your country, you can set that up here. And now if someone's from the US, they'll get robomq.us. If they're from Italy, they'd get robomq.it, and so forth. We do support and/or logic here, so you can get pretty detailed if you would like, and you'll notice that you have this capability throughout the workflow. Once you have all of that mapped, next step, of course, is choosing what steps you want to automate at these various life cycles. So first one, someone gets hired, you'll create the account, you can choose what type of password you would like, require them to change it when they first sign in, and we do have some preboarding functionality that you can take advantage of. For example, let's say HR gives you varying times in advance of when a new hire is going to start. If you want to make it so it's a little more stable, one thing you could do is, let's say you pick 4 days in advance here. What that means is 4 days before their start date, Hire2Retire will be able to create their account in a disabled state, or enabled if that's your choice, as well as maybe get ahead on some steps, like sending an email to IT for provisioning. Hey, first name, last name is starting 4 days from now on blank start date. Please get them a laptop. Please get them a desk space, that sort of thing. Since it is created in a disabled state, if you wanted to automatically enable it, of course, that's also an option. So let's say 9 a.m. on their first day, a new hire walks in, everything will be set up. No manual action required. If they are remote and maybe you wanted them to have a little bit more time in advance than their first day at 9 a.m., just so that they can kind of familiarize themselves with what they need, you can always choose to maybe have the account enable 1 day in advance, or there's various other options there. When someone is changing roles, or maybe there's a profile update, this is where you would choose how you want to handle those group memberships. So we do have a few options here. Our most popular by far is retain all groups not defined in group mapping automation. What this basically means is if someone changes departments, let's say from sales to marketing, and Hire2Retire sees that you have this option selected, we will go ahead and remove that sales determined access, give you the marketing determined access as chosen by your rule sets on Hire2Retire. But if there was any access you gave to an employee outside of Hire2Retire, we'll leave it alone upon that change. Now, when someone is getting terminated, we have a variety of steps you can choose to automate from here. If you want to put them in a specific OU, purge certain attributes like personal phone number, personal email address, that sort of thing. And this is also where we support various types of terminations. So we support both scheduled and immediate. The way this works is, let's say for scheduled terminations, someone turned in their 2-week notice. Next Friday at 6 p.m., they're going to be heading out. Hire2Retire will see that. We can mark it so at 6 p.m., we will go ahead with all of the typical post-termination steps. So putting them in that OU, disabling that account, removing those privileges and access, that can all be handled by us. But of course, not everything is scheduled, and we support immediate termination as well. The way that works is if HR, for termination reason puts involuntary, for example, Hire2Retire will see that regardless of their last day worked or whether they're still on the payroll. Hire2Retire will go ahead with all of those termination steps as well. These also include how we want to handle the group memberships, removing directly assigned Microsoft licenses, and if you tend to turn OneDrives into shared OneDrives, or same with mailboxes, making it a shared mailbox, we can handle this as well. If it's conditional, like maybe you only do this if job title contains manager or if they're in a certain department, we can also handle that. If you were, for example, to convert a mailbox to a shared mailbox, some of the options you have available to you are sharing it with the manager, removing all aliases, and changing the display name. You will see that the attributes on the right, you can drag and drop so it's dynamic for each person. And this also includes automatic replies that you can have send out that are different based off whether the email is coming from within or without the organization. We also support mail forwarding, and if you do want to delete the account after an aging period, you have that option. In terms of leave, if you do have a standard way of handling that, like maybe you disable the user or you change the OU, this is also supported by us. If you only want to handle leave, if it's, for example, security and disciplinary leave, that's another thing we can do. And you can just uncheck typical leave. Are there any questions on everything I've been going through so far? I know it can be a lot at once. Okay. So jumping to OU assignment, the way we handle it is by attributes and concept of priority. So let's say if someone is this department and this location, and they're a new hire coming in, we will see first priority rule set. If they match this department and location, we'll put them in this OU. If none of these apply, Hire2Retire will jump to the second priority rule set, apply the same logic, and keep going down the line until finally they're in a default OU. There's no limit to the number of rule sets or how complicated you want to get with your attributes, so you can get pretty creative here. Jumping to group memberships, we have a few different ways that we can handle this. The ones we support are security group, distribution list, enter ID only distribution list, Microsoft 365 group, mail-enabled security group, and enter ID security groups. All of these, you'll notice, are pretty similar to OU assignment in terms of how we handle it. The difference is there's no concept of priority because you can be in multiple security groups, multiple distribution lists, and so on. For Communication Hub, these are all of the lifecycle stages that you can have automatic emails sent out. I'm going to click one real quick. Okay. David, would you mind giving a brief overview of this Communication Hub real quick?
Yes, of course, I can certainly do that. So we have the Communication Hub during any stage of a life cycle, whether it's somebody being pre-boarded, onboarding, change of role, somebody being terminated, any of those life cycle events. You can create custom branded email templates, and you can utilize attributes from both the HR data either the HR data or from the AD data, and you can create these custom branded email templates to notify any group within the company that have other actions that they need to do, or it could be to the employee themselves as they're joining the company. You could say, welcome to the company. Here's some forms we need you to fill out. All those things can be done during the any stage of the life cycle, and they can be very flexible, and we have customers using these for all sorts of ways. There could be attachments. You could have links to forms for them to fill out, like the company handbook. You can also integrate if you're with a ticketing system or your ITSM system, you can use their SMTP address, and you can just create a ticket that way. So there's multiple flexible ways you can use these the Communication Hub here.
Thank you, David. So that's basically just an overview of Communication Hub. You'll see when I jump to Service Desk really briefly how similar it is. And what I will be going ahead to show is the Service Desk options that we have available right now. So we are continuously growing this with our feature releases that happen every 4 to 6 weeks. If you see any of these that may look familiar to you, keep that in mind. If there's one that you use you don't see here, feel free to let us know. We could potentially add it to our roadmap, and then you'd be able to natively integrate here. So when you are using one of these service desks, you'll note that it looks pretty similar to Communication Hub. The difference is there's a little bit more detailed field-based mapping. And it'll vary, of course, a little bit with each service desk based on what they offer. Jumping to the Access tab. So I know we've mentioned a little bit throughout this role-based access control with various third-party applications. What you're looking at here is the ones we currently natively integrate with. This is all included in Hire2Retire. If you see any familiar ones that you might use in your day-to-day or anyone in your department that uses it, we are also adding to this continuously with every feature release as well. So if you are interested in which third-party applications we offer, or if you want to give any suggestions, let us know and we're happy to send that over. Additionally, we also can connect with all of these third-party applications offered on the marketplace. Now, these aren't directly set up right now, but we do have Hire2Retire specific instructions, and if you did want us to set it up, or if there was a custom connector you had in mind that you don't see right now, feel free to let us know and we can also build that for you for a one-time token fee of $3,000, which doesn't cover everything, but just kind of helps act as a gateway as we work on building this sim library. Now, this Observe page is a way to be able to view everything that Hire2Retire has been doing. So you'll see an overall graph here, and then if you would like to go into the details, you can see that as well. So let's go to an update. Let's say you want to see what changes was made to Hallie's account on December 8th. You can click this icon over here, and what you will see is first the attributes that we're getting from your HR system, then the attributes in Active Directory. And one thing to point out here is AD is a non-versionable entity, so it doesn't actually save the previous value. However, we do save it, so you can see what it used to be, what it is now, and as a result, which security groups were added, removed, or retained, and same with distribution lists, Microsoft 365 groups, and so on. If you wanted to view all this without having to go straight to Hire2Retire, you do have the option to schedule a report. So whoever you'd like, detailed or a summary version, maybe you set it for every Monday and Thursday at 9. Once this is set, we will be able to have all this information emailed to you regularly. Now, what you can also do with all this rich data is pipe it into your BI or archival with this audit trail feature. We have a few options here, AWS 3, MySQL, and Azure Blob. So of course, this can help for those auditing purposes. Another thing to point out here is run mode. So we do have two options here. That's going to be autopilot and supervised. Autopilot is essentially just when that change is made in the HR system, like Bamboo HR, Hire2Retire sees that, we'll go ahead with the changing of all those privileges and access accordingly. If you did want to have a little more control from the IT side, or maybe just you're used to manual, once you have Hire2Retire, you want to kind of have a little bit more control before getting used to it, you have this supervised mode. So what that basically is, you'll see it looks pretty similar to the Observe page when I go ahead and click on one of these options. What it's showing here is it's basically showing you what changes we would make, and you can choose whether to approve it or not before it happens. So you'll see it looks similar to the Observe page data in terms of the first thing you see here is the attributes we're getting from the HR system. Then what we're seeing in Active Directory. This time it's showing what the previous value would be and what the new value would be if this change was made, as well as what security groups would be added, removed, or retained, and same with distribution lists, Microsoft 365 group, and so on. From here you can choose whether to accept or reject it. If you accept it, then it will now happen and you'll see it in the Observe page. Last thing here to point out is error notification. If there was a time you just want to be notified in case anything happens, maybe we didn't get the information from your HR system right when it was supposed to, that can totally be set to be notified when there's an error to an email of your choice. However, I'll point out that the subscription does include proactive monitoring, so we'll let you know we see these things. We'll keep you informed of it as well. This also, the subscription includes all of those features I was talking about that come out. Every customer gets them. You'll always have the latest version of Hire2Retire. And if there are any features you don't see here but would be pretty helpful to your process, let us know. We could potentially add it because we do have a customer-driven product roadmap, and it's how we've built our product today. So we definitely appreciate them. Let us know if you have any. And last thing, of course, is 24/7 support. During the implementation process, after it, you'll always have people from either our US or India headquarters that can get in touch with you and help you out. This will all be, like mentioned, just part of the subscription. So this was essentially a pretty quick overview of Hire2Retire, but does anyone have any questions or things you wanted to go back on, anything like that? Well, in that case, that's basically all I have here. Was there anything I missed, David?
No, I don't think so. I think you were pretty thorough, in a quick way, but it was pretty. I think you went over everything pretty well.
Well, thank you.
So well that there isn't any questions. That's good.
Love to see it. I'll go ahead and show us on here. Basically, that's about it for our little brief overview of Hire2Retire for the webinar this month. Thank you guys so much for coming. Thank you for listening. If you do have any questions, feel free to reach out if you want to see a demo for your specific HR system, your specific AD setup. We're happy to do so. You have our emails, and we'll also send you a recording of this webinar so that you can look through at your convenience and let us know any steps you might want to take. Other than that, if there are no questions, thank you all so much for your time, and have a wonderful, great rest of your day and weekend. Thank you so much. Have a good one.
Great job. Bye.
Thank you.